And then coming around. Oh, good.
Oh yeah, I keep my hands locked up.
Good.
My name is Brittany Riley. I'm listed as a parent. I'm also a teacher at Slanesville Elementary School, so you may know me. My main concern is the need for long-term residential drug rehabilitation centers in West Virginia. My son was a drug addict, and he overdosed in Morgantown. And when we brought him home from the hospital, he really wanted treatment. We had gone through years of other things, but this time he really wanted treatment. And so he started calling. We went through the phone book, through on the internet, and every number we called, we were to dead end. We were lost. The ones that would take our insurance were filled. There were 2 to 3 week waiting periods at each one, even more at some. Others there were openings in Florida. We could have gone to Florida. Those were for the affluent and the Rush Limbaugh.
And, from what I see in my job and what concerns me sometimes with what I see is how much of this stuff does get out there. I mean, it's huge. It's unbelievable sometimes the quantities of some of the prescriptions that you see, or just simply how much of it you feel is being used in drug diversion. I mean, it's unbelievable. And then you start seeing what's happened in the past couple of weeks with what's in the news. It's beyond what you can imagine sometimes. So I think that the biggest problem that I can see with some of that is how much of it hits the schools, hits these young kids, and gets these kids caught before they realize they're caught.
Part of the issue that comes with that is the crime that comes from the substance abuse. A lot of times you have pills which may be anywhere from $30 to $80, and prescription pills are, from what I've seen, the biggest issue in Hampshire County. In order to get the money for that, there's a lot of breaking and entering, robbery, forgery, muttering. A lot of people just basically a lot of theft, a lot of stealing, and that's of course a big problem. Another issue that I've seen because I've worked in Child Protective Services formerly is the age in which people start using. A lot of times the target is more the high school age, and there's a lot of programs that go towards those children, and that is great. But it's happening more and more towards middle school. It's not so much just, kids, older teenagers drinking a little bit on farm parties. It's just people starting in 5th, 6th grade. By the time they get to high school,
I tend to agree with Mrs. Riley and some of the statements made by these other folks. One of the big concerns is just, I think, almost a total lack of treatment facilities. We deal with it a lot in the court system. I get a lot of phone calls from parents of teenagers and college students, looking for a bed somewhere, and there aren't any. I mean, for all practical purposes, there aren't any unless you're in the court system and you get a court order.
Because 5 years ago, if you had asked me what's the most prevalent drug in Hampshire County, you probably said marijuana. Today, I think it's by far prescription medication. It's harder to detect in a lot of ways, and for whatever reason it may exist, a lot of people feel that it's not as harmful as even marijuana may be. But prescription medication right now is by far the biggest problem we're facing with the illegal use of drugs in Hampshire County.
I'm sitting here and I have to look back on the wall and I says, what's that? That banner, very first thing on it. It says future. Right there is the thing that I believe that we really need to look into on what concerns me the most about substance abuse here is our future. And our future goes back to our younger generation that's coming forthwith here they're coming up here, what have they got to look forward to? It's going to be up to us as parents, as friends, as relatives, to try to take a stronghold and to everybody working together. From what I've gathered, it's not because that law enforcement can work together. It's not because our doctors, pharmacists can all work together here, but we need everyone to work together. We need everybody to come together and try to work this thing out. And I really think that no one really knows the real answer as to how to do it.
One of the things, and I don't want to insult anybody's intelligence who have tried things that we suggest and they haven't worked, and you're going to sit there and say, well, I tried that, that didn't work. But I want you to consider maybe what didn't work for one person may work for others. I think the one essential thing that we have to do to protect ourselves and our loved ones is start really early, first of all. You know, I have a 4-year-old granddaughter that came home with a little red ribbon on, and she knows what that means. So we start really early.
First, I thought that everyone needs to be aware that it can happen to anyone. I think I always pictured heroin addicts as dirty stones in alleys shooting up, and that's not the way it is. I thought, I know I'm not a perfect parent, but my husband and I thought we did all the right things. We did Little League, we had dinner at the table every night. My son did kickboxing, Boy Scouts. He was even the leader in his youth church group. But he still became an addict. So don't close your eyes and pretend it can't happen to you. I mean, I would lay there at night and think, I cannot believe this is really my family that's going through this, and it was. We also have to get rid of the stigma that's attached. And I know that here I'm really out of my safety zone because I'm very uncomfortable. I wanted to hide. You know, I have hidden 3 years of my son and our problems. And I hope very few people know, probably everyone does. But, it's kind of like it's not something that I want to talk about. I'm a teacher and I want to set a good example. And I just feel like my friends that I teach with would even think I'm a bad parent. And I'm not. I made mistakes, I know, but I'm not a bad parent. Everyone makes mistakes. My son made a mistake, yes, when he chose to do drugs. You know, he didn't even have an accident or anything, he just did drugs. But no one wakes up and says, I want to become a drug addict. And it happens, and you're there. And we need to do something. You have to be aware that it can happen to everyone. Another thing is don't be afraid to drug test your child. I know that your child might say, oh, you don't trust me. You know, if you do this, well, you expect me to do it then. But it's better to have your child angry with you than to be woken up in the middle of the night with a phone call about an overdose.